Welcome to today's training. Today's topic is going to cover layers and toolpath templates. Both of these topics will be useful for organizing, ordering, and achieving overall better efficiency with your file creation. For our first example, we're going to look at this musical instrument set. This is a set of musical instruments cut out of bamboo plywood, and they hang up on the wall. And what we're going to look at here is importing bitmaps, taking those vectors, and putting them on different layers. And what's useful about the layers is you're able to organize your different vectors. You can color code them, you can name them, and you can do the vector selector when we get into the tool pathing portion. And that's where we'll spend the majority of our time, is looking at the file here and spending time down here where it says layers. And as you can see here, visually we can only see one set of vectors right now, but if I turn on these other layers, there's a lot more going on this sheet. So we're going to look into it, how to set this up. So for this example in these musical instruments, instead of me drawing each one of these, I'm actually going to go to Google and type in images, and I need to go in here and make sure I get my tool set up as far as I'm usage rights, and I'm able to not I can reuse these without infringing anything. I could go in here and set up my size, usage rights, and all that. And again, if you choose to draw them, that's great. If you have access to a clip art gallery, that's great. Or this is the route I took on this instance. And save those images, and then just one by one brought them in using the import bitmap for tracing, and trace them with the bitmap feature, which is a whole nother tutorial in itself. But for you to see, when you do bring it in this way, what it does is it creates your first layer. So typically a file is started on layer 1, and anytime something is imported in, it is brought in on a different layer. And then as we start organizing this file and detailing it, we will start adding different layers for that. So if I click down on the layers tab, you can see already the bitmap layer has been added for this. So let me go ahead and trace this now and bring in the rest of the bitmaps for tracing, and we'll move on from there with creating layers. Alright, so I've traced all of my clip art and made them into a vector format that we can work in. And before we go into layers, let me explain a little bit more about what they are. So let me click on layers, and as you can see down here right now, we have just the two layers. We have layer 1 and bitmap layer. The little light bulb here, turning it on or off by clicking on it, is what allows it to be shown on the screen. So yes, the different bitmaps that were traced are still in the file. They're just turned off. There's no need to see them. So this is more of an organization thing. There's no rhyme or reason, right or wrong. It's just a personal preference of toggling on and off where I want to see this. What we'll do next is we'll create different vectors for the different toolpaths, and this is where we can get into naming them and putting them in different colors. It's just, again, this is more of an organization feature that we can toggle on and off that is helpful when we get into more complex projects. So putting your vectors on different layers, again, is a preference of how you want to organize your part. For me, all of the inside portions that need to be V-carved, I'd like to click on those, and I'd like to move those to a new layer. So that was just simply by me right-clicking it, or I had the option down here of add a new layer, where I could click on this and go, this is going to be the V-carve. And here, again, when you click on this, it shows you your different options for getting into renaming it, deleting it, and what it is that you want to do with that current layer. So since I've already created the layer, I can right-click on these and go just move to layer and click on, I want that to be on the V-carve layer. So if I deselect those, everything still looks the same. And a neat function that's within the layer management is being able to not only turn it on or off if you want to see it, but I can color this. So if I wanted my V-carve to have a separate color than the other vectors, I can go ahead and select that. And now the V-carve have a red. And the next one that I want to do, I'm going to right click here, and I'm going to go to move to layer, new layer, and this one's just going to be our profile, the one that we cut all the way around. Again, I can give that a color, and I can also say if that is the visible layer, if I want it to stay on with the light bulb, and then active, if I'm going to currently be working on that layer, whatever up here is bolded is the one that is active, but I currently want to start working with my profile one. So I'm going to go ahead and click that, and when I hit OK, watch what happens up here in your left corner. It changes now, adds the profile, bolds that because that is the active layer. So that would be the layer that is now what you are working with. So I have now just taken all of my parts and I have moved them to two separate layers. I have one more part down here that I still need to create another layer for and move one more part. Since this one here is also a profile, I'm just going to right click on it, move to layer, and say this is a profile. But this one here is a part that I need pocketed down to a specific depth. So I'm going to right click on this and move to layer, and in this case this is a new layer, and this one I want to give this a specific name so I know what it is. Again, this goes into the layer management. It's helping you as the user of your file with organization. So 0.3 pocket, and this is the little part that I just want pocketed down by 0.3. And I'll go ahead and I grab a color that I want for this. Again, you have all these different colors, the options for more colors. And we'll just give this one a greenish color. And when I deselect off there, you can see that I've now taken all my parts, put them on separate layers. I've color coordinated the parts. I can turn on the light bulb, what I want to see or not see. One thing I also like to do before I get into modifying these too much is I'm actually going to right click all of these, and I will do a copy to layer, and I will do a new layer, and I'm going to call this one my original. I like to keep everything original on one layer before I start manipulating and moving things around too much. So what I will do is I'm going to go ahead and turn off all these other layers, so you can see red on profile because the profile is the active layer, but it's not turned on. So I do want my original one to be active because I'm going to take these original vectors that I have, my original vectors, and I'm going to move them down here. So then I can go ahead and shut those off, save those for later, go back up here to my profile and turn these on so I can start working back with these. So my original is off, my bitmap's off, and I can organize these and order them no different than what you do when you're toolpathing over here. But what I'm able to do is I took an original set, I've turned them off because I don't want to see them. My bitmap layer is turned off because I don't need to work with those right now. And now I can just work with my active shown vector layers, and then I'm going to go ahead and nest these, and then that's where we'll move into our toolpath templates. One more layer management before we nest is we've moved everything to named layers. So layer 1 now, if I turn everything off and we look at just layer 1, there's nothing on layer 1. So if I right click and delete it, it just goes away. However, if there was something on a layer and you had it turned off and you went to delete it, for instance, let me just go ahead and do a copy to layer. In that case, I could have turn this off, and I had pasted this on here so you can see it's currently on layer 1 and on the light bulb on that. If I was to have shut that off so I'm not seeing that, and I click on layer 1 to delete it, it is going to give you an option that, hey, layer 1 does contain data. Would you like to delete that data, or would you like to move that data to a different layer? So it will catch you if you try to delete a layer that has information on it. Since all I did was make a quick copy and paste just for this example, I don't need that data. I'm going to go ahead and just hit delete, and it's gone. Again, we're back to red because that's the active layer and it's turned off. So I would turn on my layers that it is that I'm going to work with, and now we'll proceed with the nesting. So we've put everything onto its layers. We'll come back here to the nesting function, select everything. I'd like to do 5 sets of these, apply 5 sets. You go ahead and change in your tool diameter. Again, you could watch the tutorial on how to nest parts. I preview this, and since we've already put all of our vectors on the layers that we want, once this nests it out now into 5 sets, I can select it all, and what I want to do now is I do want to ungroup these. I had these grouped before so they would move, and I'm now ungrouping those. And when I deselect it, that you can see it has now taken all of the parts and put them in their respective layers with the amount of parts requested in the nesting. So what we've done here with the layers is we've been able to manage them by putting different parts, different types of cuts, and giving them different colors to different layers. And now we've organized them. We can come back here to toggle them on or off if we want to see the bitmap or not. We can turn it on or off, turn the original on or off by going down here to the layer function. But what we'll do now is we'll take the next step and use what layering that we've done here in the drawing side, and we'll come over here to the toolpath side where we can get into toolpath templates. Well, with all of our vectors layered, nested, we're now ready to toolpath this. And the reason for getting into toolpath templates is creating a set of toolpaths that can be applied to similar job setups requiring the same toolpath. So say you make this set of 5, but then after this what we'll do is have a full 4x8 sheet that's just the guitar. And instead of coming in and creating a whole nother set of toolpaths, we'll be able to use these functions here where we can load, save, and merge these toolpaths. So let's go ahead and get started with that. So the first toolpath that I want to do is a V-carve, where we're going to V-carve down inside of the different instruments. And for this one, this is what's really nice about having things on layers, because this gets into the vector selection down here. Instead of me manually going around and selecting everything on that V-carve layer, I can come in right here and click on the selector. And here we go, vector selector, and this dialog allows you to follow through here, and we want all of the closed vectors that are on the V-carve toolpath. So by just doing these 2 clicks, I've selected 395 vectors that normally I would have had to have moved around and maneuvered around and using the clicking and holding the shift key and select those. So I'm able to do that all in just 2 clicks. I've now selected everything on the V-carve toolpath. I hit close, and then I would go ahead and hit calculate, and it's selected all of the V-carve, and it is telling me, hey, your material is only 1/2 inch thick, and your tool depth to get to the widest spots where some of these have a really wide V-carving is going to be to a 0.527. So that's where I want to spend my time right now, setting up this one toolpath and getting it correct for all these different shapes. And then when I want to use the toolpath template for creating, say, individual shapes or other parts using the same material, I don't have to come back in and go through setting all this back up. I can use the toolpath template to load what I've already created from an existing file. And let's do that. Since we don't want our V-carve to cut all the way through, I'm going to go ahead and hit cancel. And it says no toolpath generated, and that's fine because I'm going to give this a flat depth and say, hey, I don't want these to go any deeper than whatever the specified depth. For instance, on this, I think it's just going to look good on the wall with maybe about half the material in depth. And instead of it having a V bottom with a flat depth where you'd have a bunch of lines showing, and let me show that to you in the preview first, we're going to go ahead and add a flat area clearance tool. So we're kind of adding on a few different things here, but if you follow through the tutorial from start to finish, you'll see. And what you can see down here when we zoom in is very pixelated, but it's also not very flat because it's using a V-carve bit to do that flat 1/4 inch depth. And this is where we would go in here and select a flat area clearance tool, and just knowing the parts size, I want to grab my 1/8 inch straight bit, and when I go ahead and calculate that now, it's brought in 2 bits, and that will go ahead and go down there and clean that up so it's a nice flat surface. So to recap on this one, what we've done here is we just went in to create a V-carve. We gave it a flat depth so it didn't cut all the way through our material. So with a flat depth, to have a nice smooth bottom where it's going to have that flat depth is where we added our clearance tool. And instead of going in here and multiple clicking, we used a vector selector where we did it here and we selected everything on the profile. And the reason I showed you how to set this toolpath up is what we're going to do when we get done cutting this specific file is we might have another file to load where it's just the guitar or the saxophone or just the different musical notes. And instead of having to come back in here and go through and set this up and get these measurements, what we're going to be able to do from this is hit calculate, and we're able to, when we get done with this file here, this vcarve one, we can save this out. And since this is a multiple one, we can save this out as a merge toolpath. But let's go ahead and finish this file. So let's finish assigning our toolpaths. This part is not new to you if you're watching this and you're getting into the toolpath templating. So what we would do next is zoom back out. I'm going to turn these off so I'm not viewing them. The next thing I need to do is the flat depth on all of these pockets. And again, there's 5 sets of these around here. And what I'm going to do, since we did have a pocket in the previous toolpath where we used that 1/8 inch bit, just to save from a bit change in this example, I'm going to go ahead and grab the pocket toolpath, and I'm going to have it at the cut depth, select the bit, and that was our 1/8 inch straight, the same one that we used for the wood earlier. And again, instead of trying to find the 5 of these and select them all, I will go down here again to what we call the vector selector. And I would like everything not on the vcarve this time, but on the 0.3 pocket. And this is why it's a good idea to have named things, because here I start talking with the tutorial and moving along, and see, for this project to be proper, that has to have a 0.3 depth. So I know, oh shoot, my cut depth. So naming your layers helps with organization as well this way. So 0.3, I would come back here to change my setting to its 0.3. I've selected everything on that vector, and I'll also name this as my pocket 0.3. Calculate, and there's where it shows the 5 different settings. And then to finish this up before we get into the setting up of the templating, we would just create our final profile toolpath, where in this case we want to go through our material thickness, which is T, plus I'm going to go just a little bit deeper into our sacrificial spoil board underneath, equals, so that plus the 0.01 is 0.51, and this here we were just using a 1/4 inch down cut to go along our profiles, and set this up to the type of material that you're using. And again, instead of trying to select all these outer ones, what I can do is go into my selector mode, and not the 0.3 this time, but we want the profile toolpath. And when I hit close, you can see that it selected all of those. By clicking 1 click, 2 click, it did 70 vectors all as one. So it's a lot more efficient way for you to get into toolpathing when you're using layers and you're using the vector selection. And then when I hit calculate there, it is going to warn me that my material is 0.5 and I'm going 0.51. That's okay, because I did tell it, please cut through the material a little ways into the sacrificial board. So now what we have is our project fully toolpathed and cut out for this job, for this one job that gave us 5 sets. And then what we will look at next here is taking these toolpaths and applying them to our toolpath templates. So these toolpaths that we've taken our time creating, we can now apply these to other jobs with similar setups that would use these same toolpaths. So let's look at our options here. The first one is load toolpaths. Well, we're going to have to create some and save them before we can load that. So that'll be our final step. This one here says save selected toolpaths as template. The next one over is save all visible toolpaths. And then finally is merge toolpaths. So we'll look at a few through as we go through these. The first one that we would want to save out would be, these two go hand in hand, the vcarve pocket with the vcarve. That's what got us down to our depth. It gave us the flat bottom and then the V around. So these here I would actually select. A lot of people would think to do the create merge, but merging toolpaths is when it's the same exact toolpath as far as bit parameters, feet to speed bit. So it would be if you had multiple cuts on one part using the same bit, you could merge them. So instead of the ShopBot jumping around from part to part to part, it would merge all alike toolpaths cut in that area before it moves on. So it makes it actually more of an efficient type of a cut. But for what this one we're going to do is save the selected toolpath as a template, and we're going to put this inside of our toolpath folder. And what we will call this one is, again, getting into naming these. An organization is what works for you. I'm just going to call this my V90. Again, stay away from spaces and special characters. When it gets into naming these, you can use periods or you can use underscore. I'm just going to call this V90, and then it's my 0.125 EM. So I know that those are my 2 bits. And what I would want to do is actually name these in a way that corresponds to the order of the cut. So the way I have these saved over on the right hand side is I have the pocket first, and then I have the V90. So V90. But things you need to look out for, again, starting this with a period could be an issue with the file format. Again, this is just a Windows function that gets mad with the ShopBot control software. So what I'm just going to do is just take the period out of there. I have my 125 endmil as my first bit, and then my V90 is my second. And I know that will be that, but I also want to give this a name for which type of file it goes to. And I will call this my musical, because I'm cutting these out for my musical instruments. So I will save that. And that's now saved that together. The next one here I have is the clearance, which is just the 0.3 for that pocket. And then again, you'd go through and set these all up to do for your pockets, for your profiles, and work your way down through. So I went through and finished up doing these, and you can see that here is the end mill with the V carve for doing our V carve, and then the profile with the 1/4 inch bit for doing around all of our parts. And what's nice we have here is we have a similar project with similar material, and this is what's nice, to take everything that we've just seen in this tutorial and add it together. So what we have here is we'll take this, we'll nest these, and get 24 on a sheet, apply that, preview that out. Okay, and then again, the last job that we did was using this 1/2 inch bamboo plywood, where we had to go in for the profile and the V, and we had to come in and we had to figure out our feeds and our speeds and our bits and our ordering of all that. And to save us time, since this is a similar job, we already can go up here to load toolpath templates, and we can first load our V90 end mill that we used, which brings that in, and then we can also load in our profile toolpath. So again, the organization is key here with naming things, so I know what they are and it's easy to find. And just like we did before, we'll go in here and use the vector selector using the toolpaths that have already been created because they've been loaded in. I now just come in, grab the selector. Again, you can double verify here that it does have everything already on the V carve. It's associated with that. I am going to hit calculate to verify that it comes through. And since this one didn't use the flat bottom, because it's a smaller one, it turned the flat bottom off. It associates all that with you, figured all that out. And finally, one last toolpath here where I bring this in, and again, it's everything on profile, but I do need to hit calculate for it to take place. Again, don't get in the habit of clicking through these like I just did. Read it. It does say 0.5, 0.51. I am okay with it going a little bit deeper. And I preview all my toolpaths, and there we go. There we have our finish. And again, I even come up here and to add the color that I want it to look like. I can add in a bamboo if I needed it to. But what I've done very easily now is I've taken the layers, used the layers, brought them in, used the toolpath templates from a previous file, saved those, was able to load this because this is a similar job doing similar projects, and instead of having to create toolpaths from scratch, was able to do that in this type of project. Today's tutorial was to get you into the habits of using layers and toolpath templates. And again, this is for organization purposes and to help you with similar jobs to save you time. So hopefully the example in today's tutorial and training was enough to get you started. I would recommend going to the Vectric website and also looking at the layer guide, merging of toolpaths, and they have more in-depth tutorials on each of the features in there that breaks it down even more into more specifics than just the overall projects that we did. And of course, always please use our website and our forum for resources, and please come back for the next training. And thank you for today, and we'll see you next time.